today we're going to be talking about time signatures. I'm redoing this video because FL has updated their time signatures. They're now a lot more flexible, and I think it's a lot easier to understand. So what is a time signature? Well, there are two words there. We have the word time and we have the word signature. So time is going to be notes happening over time. And so I think it's easiest to understand if we think of what's the difference between harmony and rhythm, right? Well, if we were writing out a C major chord, so here's a C major chord, and if we looked, we'd say, yep, there's C, E, G, they're all happening at the same time, and so they form a C major chord. We are calling that a harmonic analysis because we're really concerned with the notes. But let's say that we do something rhythmically with these notes. We move them in time. So now they go up. Now there is a rhythm. So if we were to look at just this note, it's only C. This note, it's only E happening at this time, and this note only G. But we'd say if we really know what's going on, if we look at this whole window of time, and we say, well, in reality, it's really just C, E, G. So it's still a C major scale. And so when we look at it like that, we call that a harmonic analysis. But when we have things spread out over time, that's rhythm. So in general, harmonic analysis is concerned with a window of time, where rhythm is really concerned with what's happening over time. And rhythm is a lot more than just notes happening, over time. Notes can be loud in different ways. For example, if I have a C here, and right now we have it on a staccato, it sounds like a pizzicato, so this is mislabeled. So there's one kind of loudness with that. We see that their velocities are the same. But over here, this one, it's loud, but in a different way. And so when things happen like this, we have a, we call this an articulation. And that can play a big emphasis in rhythm. We can also have things that are the exact same articulation. And so here, these are exactly identical. But if we make one louder and the rest softer, maybe we do it, and then we make the loud one happen again, and then 3 soft ones, we get a sense of pulse. And when we have a sense of pulse like this in our entire song, we call it a meter, because it's a general thing that occurs repeatedly through our entire song. So we say the song has this meter. And so a song can have many meters happening in it. And the way we express this meter is through the use of a time signature. So when we write a time signature, we are saying, this is the meter I am in. It's a little more complicated though, because one time signature can actually sometimes mean many different meters. So for example, I could have a meter that goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I would write that as 4, 4. We'll talk about why in a bit. Now, if I had another meter that went 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. If I had that 1, 2, 3, 4, but 3 wasn't as loud as 1, I might still write 4, 4. And so they're different meters, but we tend to clump certain ideas with certain time signatures. And this has actually gone through various changes in history. Back in the day, the meters they wrote with are not, they're similar, but they would write things that look differently. It gets a little weird after this. So let's go ahead, let's keep it simple for now. So we notice here that this sense of meter comes from the fact that we have a pulse, and some notes are louder than other notes. Now you notice all my notes are equal length here, right? We have all the notes being the same length. Whenever we deal with defining a general meter, we consider equal lengths of time. So basically notes that are the same length. So let's go ahead and talk about finally, what is this meter thing? Well, FL has this kind of intuitive way of looking at it. You notice here that we have these dark grid lines, these lighter grid lines, and then we have this like really dark line, and this really dark line has the number 2, and the next really dark line has the number 3. So these bits here, we call these measures, and because I'm redoing this video, I don't know exactly what I've talked about before because it's kind of been a while. But basically, we call these measures, and these measures are a unit of time. So you know how before I was counting to 4, I was going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, when I was doing that, whenever I go back to 1, I'm moving to the next measure. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4. So now instead of saying 1 over and over and over, I'm counting the measures. 1, 2, 3. So that's what's going on here. And if we turn on the metronome in FL Studio, the metronome will make a different sound on what's called the downbeat. So the downbeat is the beat where we change to the next measure. It's not entirely... The downbeats can get a little weird if you take meter into it. But for now, that's sufficient for what we want to know. So if I play it, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. And so this is, so that's why metronomes sound that way. And metronomes will always outline what's called the fundamental meter. So what is this fundamental meter stuff? Well, we notice that it's going... So here, if I lay these out, these are quarter notes because we have 4 beats and each one is 4 of these little boxes long. And each little box is a 16th note. So that makes these quarter notes. So we have a quarter note, a quarter note, a quarter note. And there's 4 quarter notes and they happen, 4 of them happen before we go to the next beat. And we notice that our metronome makes the first beat a little more important, right? It gets a different sound. And when we're writing metrically, if we're writing in true 4/4, meaning since a quarter note has 4 16th notes in it, so we say commonly we associate the number 4 with the quarter note. This doesn't hold for all values of notes, but since the quarter note has 4 16th notes, we say, there's a 4 there. And then there are 4 of them in a measure. This is like the most confusing part of time signatures. I completely understand if you get a little lost here. So I want to write some stuff down so it's a little clear. So time signatures have a number on top and a number on bottom. They look like fractions, but they're not really fractions. The bottom number, so okay, what's the top number? The top number is the number of beats in a measure. So these lines here, these are the beats. And now you might be going, okay, number of beats. So since we have 4 quarter notes and each quarter note is 1 beat long, that's why the top number is a 4. And we say, okay, that's why the top number is a 4. But we never really said how long the beat should be. Like the beat could be really short. Like what if we said, let's make this a beat. This little bit here. That bit. What if that was a beat? Could we do that? Can we make it 3? 3 seems like kind of a weird choice. Why not do 3? Maybe we'll get something cool rhythmically. The answer is yes. You can change the length of the beat. We have to actually specifically say what it is. And that's what the bottom number is for. So the bottom number is the note. It's a note value though. That's why it's confusing. The note that gets the beat. So in general, right, we have 4. That's equal to a quarter note. You can get into this whole quaver system. We're just going to stick with general notes. It's easier to understand. Now we'll go over to quarter notes. Now that's quarter notes. Now let's say, 8 makes sense for it to be 8th note, right? So these are 8th notes. And then 16 obviously would be 16th notes. And then, so now what if we went the other way though? Well, we notice here that as our numbers get bigger, we correspondingly move to shorter notes. So it's sort of backwards. So an 8 means 8th note. So if we go backwards, a 2 would mean a half note. And what's half of a half note? That's a whole note. And you can get into some weird territory. By far, the most common meters are these. We have 4, 4. That's like 4 to the floor. That's where it comes from. Boom, 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 boom. And then we have 3, 4. 3/4 is the waltz. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And we notice here, now let's interpret this. So if this bottom note means that we're using quarter notes for the beat length. So our length of beat, this thing here, is still the same length, but now there's only 3 of them. So we would only have 3 of these. So let's change the meter here. So if we right click, I guess I can't right click here, hit Shift Alt T, and this will bring up our time signature change. Now they've labeled things as just numerator and denominator. I think a more accurate description would be something along the labels we've given over here. So the numerator would say how many beats, and the denominator would say what note. That would be great. This is sort of a math way to look at it. It's actually, for this reason, it's wrong to look at it as a fraction. It's not actually how it happens. And I've even had some teachers, this isn't written music, but I've taken classes where, we're writing out music on staff paper. And I've actually lost points over putting fraction bars in time signature locations, which I thought was ridiculous because a lot of people do it. It's pretty standard. I've seen plenty of pros do this, but it's theoretically incorrect because it's over a note. And like, what does that mean? So anyways, the numerator is how many beats? So we're saying, well, we only want 3 beats. So we say we're going to change this to a 3. And the denominator, well, we want our note, this should be what note gets the beat. Like how long should our beat be? And so we say we're going to leave this as a 4 because we still want the quarter note to get the beat. And we hit accept. And look at this. We've been told that we've changed to 3/4. And now there are only 3 beats. They're still the same length, but we reached measure 2 really quickly. Now, if I play it right, we're 3, 2, 2, 3. And if I turn on our metronome, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Well, I started back at 1 for some reason. But you get the idea. We're now in 3/4. So these are very common. Now I want to outline something that I see when you're new. The point of changing a meter is so that you gain, the point of changing a time signature, I mean to say, is because it changes your meter. So if you change, let's say that I have 3/4 here. So 3 quarter notes and 4. So that's how it would be. And then in measure 2 over here, I do another time signature change back to 4/4. Let's move that over here. So now we have a measure of 4/4 and a measure of 3/4. If I filled these in with quarter notes, but they're all the same value. So in reality, we haven't changed any meter. We're not really in a meter right now. It's just 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. As far as our ear wouldn't be able to tell if this was a song and it consisted of this. It's just the same note over and over and over and over. If we make one note louder than the others, we're now in a meter. And so this is why a time signature change would happen, is because you're going to change meter. So in 3/4, the fundamental meter is when the first beat is loud and all the other beats in the measure are soft. So here it would be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, because 2 and 3 will be softer and 1 will be louder. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And that's what gives the weight in a waltz. And then you could use 3/4 in other meters. Like what if in 3/4, the 1 was still the most important, but we made 3 a little more important. We brought it up. So it's slightly louder than 2. And this was our fundamental, like this is not the fundamental meter because now they're not all equally soft in the one being louder, but now we have a slightly louder. So this is still in the 3/4 time signature, but it's sort of a variation. And this is very common. We often have all sorts of fluctuation in songs that really play with this idea. They set up a big meter, and that's the time signature you'll be seeing. But then there's things like this that happen. So here we would have this. 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. It changes. And then, you'd have different parts playing variations on this meter, but in general, this meter will hold as a common theme among all your different parts. So if you ever see someone who has time signature changes, but there's no change in volume or in style. This doesn't always have to be volume. Meter can be about like maybe the first note staccato and the other two are legato. So it'd be like bump, ba-da, bump, ba-da, bump. Maybe they're all the same value of loudness. They're all equally loud. Their dynamics are the same, but they change stylistically. Well, we're introducing meter in a different way. So time signatures and meters are very connected. And I really want to make this like as clear as possible. It's definitely a source of misunderstanding. So in 4/4, we'd have one note loud and the other soft, and it will kind of sound like an Indian chant kind of thing, like ay 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 ay. That's how I always kind of think of it. But let's listen. 1 2 3 4 2 2 3 4 3 2 3 4 4 2. You know, so on and so forth. Now we say, okay, dance music's in 4/4 a lot, and a lot of it's like this. So we might be saying, how do we know it's in 4/4? Like how all these people are saying it. Well, in some cases it's actually not. Some cases it's in cut time, which is one like this. 1 2 2 2 3. Aha, I messed that up. 1 2 1 2 1 2. So if we were to count them as measures, it would go 1 2 2 2 3 2 4 2 5 2 6 2. And if you think of like a march, marches are often written in 2/4. The reason for marches being in 2/4 is they use this kind of a meter, and it makes sense because we have two legs. So we can feel a pulse when we walk. Left, right, left, right, left, right. And so for those reasons, you know, that's why we'd write it in 2/4 and not in 4/4, even though they might look very similar. Because they're both quarter notes, but this one's been broken up into half. So we call this cut time. And that's why we might use cut time. Now, when back to the dance analogy, we would know that we're in 4/4 because in 4/4, we'll hear some pulses that will happen that will give us a clue. Like the sound design or the melodic writing will be written in a way that it emphasizes the beat. Because it's not just amplitude based, but we could have maybe a special synth or a sound that comes on that beat. Or maybe we notice that in our song, consistently the first beat has the loudest note. Or maybe the phrasing is giving us indication. So there's lots of ways to indicate meter. It's not just through this method. But this is often this is when we're teaching it. We often only mention this method, and I think it confuses a lot of students. Or it's not talked about at all, and that's a shame. So now that we understand this is also not the most common version of 4/4. The most common version of 4/4 is one where beats 1 and, well, actually, I'm not sure I could argue this is the most common, but it's definitely up there. It's way more common than this. This loud, soft, 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 loud, soft, soft. In reality, it's more like loud, soft, slightly louder, soft, loud, soft, slightly louder, soft. And things change. So then we might have something where it's like inverted, like this kind of a weird inverted cut time thing. Where this is loud on only like certain measures, but then it gets softer later. Maybe we'll write an example of that in a sec, so because that's kind of confusing. But this one, and then you might have somewhere, you know, you get slightly, like we build up to it. And, you know, we're experimenting with meters. This is great because we're able to look and say, hey, this is kind of a cool sound. Maybe I can come up with a song based on just this idea alone. And then you can toss harmony in and it gets really cool. So let me go ahead and give you an example. Let's say, okay, now we're in 4/4 for quite some time. So we're going to, you know, scoot on over here. And so maybe we have something like this. And we're keeping it all the same note. But on these other measures, we keep beat 1 the loudest, but maybe we reverse it and we say, this is kind of cool. Let's do something like this for the first 3 measures. And then on the last one, we'll do something like this to vary it up. So we're in 4/4 the entire time. The quarter note gets the beat. Beat 1 is still the most important beat, but we're sort of screwing with the listener's expectations. You see there? It's subtle, but it's there in this example anyway. Sometimes it's a lot more apparent. Maybe they're writing out instruments and there's instruments happening here that are playing a riff, and then suddenly over here, different instruments play the same riff in a way that builds. And so it pulls back. It's a clue to the listener. So anyways, that's time signatures in meters. Let's go ahead and cover a couple other examples you'll probably run into. You'll probably see 6/8 at some time. And this gets into simple meter versus compound meter. I don't know if I've talked about it, if I'm going to talk about it, or where it is in the series. But 6/8 is a compound meter. And so is 3/4 actually. So simple meter is when we can divide things up evenly into two halves. So here's a half, here's a half. And so there's two halves, and that's why it kind of makes sense for the notion of 3 to be a little bit louder, because it's halfway. It seems like an important thing. It's kind of like a little cut time. Like if we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. That's like we're going 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. There's this symmetry that occurs. 3/4 occurs when we have, we have 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3. There's not really the halfway points on a really weak beat, and that's we'd call this the and. And so if we have something, let's talk about subdivision real quick. So if we have something that goes 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. What if we want to count the beats that happen halfway? So we have our beat, it's the quarter note in this case, and we want the thing in the middle. We call this the and. And so we say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And so we'd have. Let's keep these consistent too. And we were only there's only 3 beats. So we're 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. This is like beating into your brains if you play an instrument, because they always say subdivide. So this is called subdividing. So you have a bigger thing, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But humans are pretty bad at things like really spaced out notes. Like if we had a really slow tempo, it was like something just really slow. And we get 1, 2, 3. Like I can't even. So if I were to subdivide though, it becomes easier because there's less ambiguous space. Like the brain's not the best at these big spaces. So maybe I've got this really slow thing, and I go like, okay, let me break this up into 16th notes. And the way you do 16th notes, since it's so slow, I'm like, I really got to break this thing up. So that's like these guys right here. We'd say 1 E and I don't know why it's highlighting in all these weird spots. Anyways, 1 E and 2 E and 3. So if we wanted to specifically refer to this thing right here, we'd say it's the of 2. And so so musicians would know what that means if they've been trained and have learned rhythm counting. There's different systems. Some people use different vowels and sounds and things. But for us, since we're going so slow, we might go 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E. I'm rushing and dragging. That's a terrible example. But anyways, you get the idea. We break it up into smaller bits so that it's a little more manageable. Before, I was like really lost, and there I was only somewhat lost. And so, if I were to do a proper example, I wouldn't get lost at all. And that's the whole idea. When you're playing music, you need to stay in the pocket with everyone else. You need to understand the meter that we're working in, the kind of phrasing that we're doing. So when we write out a time, so this is a really long-winded way of saying that's time signatures. And the simple meter can be broken into two, the 2 equal pieces, where the compound meter, it cannot. It's sort of this other sort of weird thing. And so 6/8 is a compound meter. And if we look at this, the top numbers, how many beats? So we'd have 6, and then of what note? 6 beats. And the beat is an 8th note, so an 8th note long. And remember, tempo is going to determine how long our 8th note is. But we have here 6/8, and so if we were to slap this in here, let's put it here. We'll go Control-Shift-T, or you can just simply right-click. and we go the numerator, right? That's 6, and that's how many beats are in our measure. And the denominator, which is, again, I think this should say what note and how many beats. But instead it says numerator, denominator, unfortunately. We have 8. Maybe it'll get updated. I can do another video. And we switch it and we say, okay, cool. Let's check out what we have here. So we have just 2 little bits. Remember, these are 16th notes. So this is an 8th note. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we go to 8. Now 6/8 is kind of weird because we have this ability to split it in half, but there's this it's just a weird one because we have the ability to split it in half, but we have this other ability to split it in half split it into 3 equal parts. So if that makes any sense. So here we could say here's a piece, and we could split it equally 3 equal ways. So we could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And in this way, 6/8 is really just a glorified 3, 4. Or we could split it into this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And in this way, it's sort of like 4, 4, but now it's been broken into 2 equal parts of 3. And so if things are divisible by 2, then we say it's simple time, and this sort of keeps going. Whereas here, we consider this compound time because our fundamental unit is really in sets of 3. Maybe that's a better way of saying it. So in simple time, let's go to our 4/4 measure and write out our beat. So this is the beat length. This beat can be broken into 2 pieces, and this beat can be broken into 2 pieces, and this continues on and on. So we've got like the big beat, and then broken into 2. Over here, if we were to break it in half, so here we've got 1, 2, 3, and then if we were to break this in half, it would be like that long. It'd be kind of this, it'd be this weird thing. Because if we kept going in half, we'd have this off number, like the halfway would be like, somewhere in there. Over here, this is not the case, if that makes any sense. I feel like I said that sort of weird. It has nothing to do with the way the note divides. So yeah, sure, this is an 8th note, and we can break 8th notes up into halves still. But it's more about what are we doing with the meter, right? Because the meter is formed by the entire measure. And so we're more concerned with the entire measure. And since this measure breaks up into 2 equal segments that really have 3 beats each, that's why this is called the compound meter. And this meter over here is broken up into a measure that's got 4 beats, and it can be broken up into equal segments of 2, and then 2 again, and then 2 again. So there you have it. That's our compound meter. So that's 6/8. 6/8 is useful. It's used in all sorts of cool songs. Sometimes it's used over 3/4, but for it has to do with those smaller varieties of notes that we can have. So now we're looking at it in we're looking at 3/4 in sort of a different way. So sometimes we pick it for that reason. But its fundamental meter would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that kind of a thing. Versus 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. There's other ones you'll see 7/8, all those. You'll see 2/4 again. 2/4, we use that marching. I've already sort of talked about 2/4. These are the ones you'll probably run into the most. And if you're gonna write some songs, I really recommend checking out 2/4, 4/4, 3/4, 6/8. These are the ones when you're new. Another one that you'll see pretty often is 5/4. You also see things like 7/8. And now we could talk about things like 7/8. So 7/8 is like a weird one. So let's say this was 7/8. How would we? Oh, I renamed it. I didn't want to rename it. I wanted to change the time signature to 7/8. That's why nothing changed. I was like, wait a second. Okay, so now there's another beat here. This is like a really weird problem because now it's like, okay, we've got a new beat here, and it's like it's just weird. It doesn't follow in the other categories as clearly. So what we do is usually when we write something in 7/8, if you're a musician about to play this music, you'll be given a little key. if it's not clear by the barring. Usually it's clear by the way the notes are barred, but we're in MIDI, and so this doesn't exist. So sometimes they'll give a key, they'll say, count the first 3 notes as like a 3-4 kind of deal, and then count the next 3 notes as a 4-4 kind of deal. So we'd say, so that means that this note would be loud, and then this note would be loud as well. And then all the other notes in the measure would be soft. So it's kind of like you're using a combo of 3-4, 4-4. And a lot of the other meters you're going to run into are simply combinations of smaller meters put together. So in this case, we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And this is like kind of the hipster thing to do. You work in this. Like 9/8 can be broken down in various ways, right? If we were to do 7/8, we can make it 4/4 first, and then those last 3 notes, because our numerator just has to add to 7, because that's what note gets the beat. The denominator will always be the same, and so we have 4/3 because now it's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the 1, because we're counting to 4, so we're treating this as like a little 4/4 measure, and this is a little 3/4 measure. So after 4, our next 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Since we're going to be doing this the whole time, sometimes we'll just, use something like 7/8 to just describe it. Now there is the rare case, this is a lot more rare, where you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So when we're writing in this time signature, that would be the fundamental meter, right? If we were to loop it, I feel like the loop's kind of important. Let's bring this down an octave. We'll turn on our metronome here. But in reality, we could see it also as these breakdowns, and this would still be like a reasonable thing to do. And then there's these really weird time signatures that you can break down in all kinds of ways. But now hopefully you've got the picture. Now why would you want to do this? Well, it could be it could really add some life to a song if you're writing stuff and you have these different meters and it makes sense. And maybe you have a theme in one meter and then in another meter. A lot of people don't change meters. Lots of songs simply stay in the same meter. In fact, probably the majority of songs do that. But now you know what the time signatures are for, why you might grab them, what they mean, how to interpret them, what a meter is, why that's there. And that's that. This video is kind of long, so I'm not going to do an example because with this sort of thing, it's so fundamental that if we write any music, we're using time signatures. So now hopefully you've seen. Now, as far as going to a new meter, that's something that if you have a groove that just sort of jives that way, that's what you're going to do. And it's also interesting to note that if I just clap a rhythm, and asked you what time signature is it, what's the meter, you're going to extract it, but you might extract halfway. So you might say, oh, it's 4/4, and someone else, not that particular rhythm per se, but you might say, oh, it's 4/4, while someone else might say it's 2/4. Or you might be able to identify beats, but you'll have a hard time determining at like what level until you see the written music, because the written music will tell you how to sort of interpret it. This is a lot more clear with barring. But for example, if I'm playing 4/4, but I'm playing it at twice this tempo, that's really going to mess with your perception, right? Because 4/4 at twice the tempo might sound like 2/4 with everything written at half the values, at half that tempo. So, for example, if I'm playing something at 100 beats per minute, and I'm writing everything as eighth notes, let's say that I double everything and now take the tempo and make it 200 beats per minute. They're going to sound equivalent. So for this reason, it's going to be kind of weird. Let me show you what I mean with a quick example. So here I have, this is good. This is a good idea. So here I have, let's go to 100 beats per minute. And let's write out our quarter notes. So let's just write out F, A, C, A. And right now, let's write them all at half the beat. So we're going to have this. Whoops. Let's select the correct length. At 100 beats per minute is what eighth notes sound like. And I asked you to find the beat. You might go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Some of you might go 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. So you know there's some ambiguousness to it. Now let's take this same thing and write it out as half notes and make this 200 beats. So we doubled the tempo. Let's listen to that. What will it sound like? It sounds the same. And yeah, kind of interesting. So it's not as clear cut when you're trying to like extract from a song. They've actually built machines that run into the same issues the humans do, that are supposed to be like beat extraction machines, where like it'll listen to something and then tap its foot on where it thinks the beat's at. And they'll make the same mistakes humans do, like the ones I just showed you. Like, who knows what it is? It's impossible to tell till we see the music. Like, what's the tempo? Like, I don't know. And so we'll make an educated guess and then work from there. Like, working at 200 beats per minute is kind of crazy. So typically, you know, we wouldn't do that. But now if we play it, no, it's not the same thing anymore. So anyways, hopefully it's more clear. I saw a comment on the last video where a lot of people got lost. They had no clue what was going on. So hopefully this makes a lot more sense, is in a little bit more context for you. I don't recall if I talked about meter very much in that other video, but this is all that's happening. If you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe, support me on Patreon. I'm currently a student and really appreciate anything that comes my way. And have a blessed day.